I'm Heather.
Welcome to Small Town Big Thoughts.
Welcome back, guys. We have Darienne here for a second week, and we hope that you guys are excited to talk about some mental health.
Thanks for having me back.
Jumping in from last week's conversation.
I'm not going to say like everything is always perfect when it comes to the mental health field. It's not. It's not always perfect. The demand is just so high. Like everybody is just, it is that way. Like everybody is trying to help one another because they're swamped.
Yeah.
Like I know people, not even just like in like all over of different agencies, who have like their caseloads are 60 and above.
Oh my God.
Like I have encountered like that is like throughout the whole like United States. Like it's not just an Oklahoma thing. I mean, it's all over. It's a high demand across. And so you're just trying to provide the best help that you can to these clients. And how do you do that?
Yeah.
To 100% when you have that many.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it is not for the weak. It is a lot. Like I take their problems and then make them mine. And I have my own issues. Think I could not do this job like 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
There's no way. When I was struggling with my own mental health and was going through that whole thing, like there was no way that I could do that. So if somebody is struggling like to that point, like there's no way.
Yeah.
And so, and you have to be, it does take strong people to do like, you know, a lot of the things like social work, mental health, like, and props to the people that do because it is very challenging sometimes.
I don't know when like mental health month is, but if you know somebody who works in the field, like go buy them some coffee.
That's like they just had the school counselors week at school yeah, last week. And I was like, Happy National School Counselors Week. And she was like, you're the first person who told me that. I'm like, oh, well, I should have bought you some nothing bunch cake. Right. I saw this really cute cake and it was like for a teacher, but I thought after I had seen it, I was like, well, I can't do that for like all the teachers because those cakes are like $30. I can't do that for every teacher. But then I got thinking, like, why did I do that for the school counselor? Like, could have made that cute. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about it till after, but
I know. I always get my best ideas like later, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I should have done that.
I know. You ever have like those people that are like bosses, and you're like, how in the world did you get to this?
Yeah.
Like I have encountered so many through my short lifespan that I've, you know, because we're not old, but, and I'm just like, sometimes like it's hard for me to hide my facial expressions. Like I am very bad at it. So if I'm mad or I'm pissed, upset, you're going to know about it. It's just all over my face. And so
I feel like I always look upset.
Yeah. And so it's just sometimes I'm just like, common sense is so lacking.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, oh my gosh. And then, you know, a lot of them are like, well, I have this degree. Well, I don't care what degree you have. You could have A through Z behind your name. But if you're
Exactly.
Common sense plays a big part.
I've been in a lot of hierarchies that have frustrated me because I just feel like I can see things that other people can't. And I know that like, once you've been in a job for a long time, like you have things go a certain way and like that's just how they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
That it's like really hard to try to, it's really difficult for, I guess, them to take advice from somebody who's new, who's green, who's young. And because I feel like they don't want to learn or they don't, I feel like older generations feel like if you try to suggest something, you're immediately undermining them. When in reality, you just have a fresh set of eyes. And it's just a new person coming into that perspective. And then they're like trying to force me into whatever is going on
Mhm.
already that's already toxic, and I can already tell that it's toxic. And like I definitely should have known that at the beginning of that mental health job, but then I was like, no, I'm helping people and I'm helping this company and like by proxy, and like I'm doing what I want to do. And it honestly, like I had the worst mental health by the time I quit that job. That like it was honestly so ironic because I was like, now I need to, like, we always joked
Mhm.
in like the office, like, oh, I'm gonna go check myself into Laureate this weekend,
Yeah.
and I'll see you guys on Monday. But like honestly, after quitting that job, I needed a week in the psych ward. Like I needed a week to just like not talk to anybody, talk to a therapist a couple times a day, like eat a couple meals and like get my shit right because I literally lost it working there. Like it was so difficult for me. Like whenever you said it's not for the weak, like it is not for the weak.
No, it's not. That's like with like the crisis unit. Like I know like there's no way that I could work in there
Yeah.
at like a part side or anything like that because that takes a lot to work with, but they're needed. And that's the problem is there's not enough of them. So that's why we have the issues that we have is because there's not enough. And they can't take literally everybody, like especially like children, like they don't take kids a lot
Oh
of
my
times.
gosh, it was always so difficult to find beds for children.
Mhm.
I remember having to call, like, I would like have to call parents and be like, there's a place on the border of Texas. Like,
Yeah.
can you want to drive that far? And they're like up in, like up in northern Oklahoma. And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, let me see if I can find something in Kansas. And they're
Yeah.
like, we don't really want to go out of state. And I'm like, yeah, but that's your only choice.
Yeah. That's what's great about some like agencies though, like they will transport. Like
Really?
yeah, like there are agencies that I know that transport. Like if they find a bed that's available, like they will have somebody that can transport
That's so
them
good.
there. So, because that is kind of my thing. I was like, so like this right, you can only find somewhere like down by Texas or like over by Arkansas. Like, but
I
a lot of people,
remember,
it's like, do you want to drive with somebody that far? Like
right.
that's struggling. Like,
Like,
you
are
know,
they gonna be okay in a car that long?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think the craziest one that I ever heard was, like, I was, like, calling for hours trying to find a place for this kid, and then finally, whenever I called the mom, I was like, "There's just nothing available, like, within Kansas, Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, like, unless you wanna go to New Mexico, Colorado," and she was like, "We found a place in California, and we're leaving in the morning."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "What?" Like, "You're just gonna what?" And
You're
she
just
was
gonna
like
go.
yeah, she was like, "We have to, that's the only thing." She was like, "I've been calling everywhere too, and nobody has
And that's
anything."
sad.
Like, you have to drive all the way across the country to get help, like, that is just
It's
so
so sad.
crazy to me.
Yeah,
But, like,
so
I
sad.
feel like in recent years, the mental health places have I don't know, I feel like a lot of them have shut down, they don't have the funding, I don't know what it
Mhm.
is, but a lot of them have, like, just disappeared.
Yeah, and, like, that's when you were talking about the turnover there, like, yours is not the only one, I think that is just across, like, the turnover is insane. Like, I can say from, like, mine personal, like, I've had 5 therapists that I've worked under,
Wow.
and I've only been there, what, a year and a half now?
Wow.
Yeah, so I've had to respond, so you're going over the whole, like, "Oh, here is the story, this is" it is, and I understand 100%, it's not anybody's fault.
Right.
It's just the turnover. It's a need, and people can't handle it, or they have to be moved around to other places. Like, and you kind of have to just either accept it. Like, it does frustrate you because you're like, oh my gosh, like you get close with that person, you start working together as a team, and then it's like, oh no, I'm quitting, or like I'm going to work here, or I'm being moved to this place, I'm being transferred to here, and it's just like but and it's like you and I realized, because at first it kind of made me was irritating, but now I'm kind of getting to the point where it's like, what do you do?
Right.
You know, but like,
Like, okay, I'll
yeah,
just wait for the next
just
one.
like how like some things are handled. I'm just like, oh my Lanta, like, you know, but it is. It's
I
not.
love that you just said that. I say that all the time, and Diego gets so mad at me whenever I say that because he's like, "That makes no sense," and I'm like, "Why?"
Oh, my Lanta.
Yes.
It's better. Well,
I'm like, what else am I gonna say? It
yeah,
just like I feel like it
it's
comes
better than
off
my
the
potty mouth that I
right. It
could
just
have.
comes off the tongue so
Yeah,
easily. You're just like,
yeah,
oh, Atlanta?
yeah. That's kind of the thing I found out about the world. You know, me and RW and my mom went to my cousin's wedding here. Was it like September? Yeah. And we were going to Wisconsin, and he was getting married in Illinois, but we were staying like right over the border. Anyway, oh my gosh. Like the whole environment is so different there. Like have a coworker who is from New York, and so her personality is like completely different. Love her to death, but it is so different. You know, I feel like I'm
Do
a
you have like is she from like New York City or like upstate?
the Bronx.
Oh, okay. So is she like tough?
Yeah. Well, and she's nice, but she's very straightforward. Like there is no like black and white. Like it is just there,
Yeah.
like point blank. Um, and that's we talk about this all the time because I'm constantly like, people can't stand the truth here. Like I'm straightforward. If I have a problem, like you know about it. That's just I'd rather somebody be that than passive aggressive. I cannot stand passive aggressive.
Oh my god, I literally that was one of my biggest things like in high school. Like
Yeah.
people are just like mad at you and you're just like, I don't know what I did.
Yes.
You know?
I can't. I have had a couple of bosses that are very passive aggressive, and I can't stand it because, yeah, it's like, because when people are passive aggressive, I feel like it's like they think that they're above you or that they're better than you. Like they're talking down to you without like talking down to you.
Yes.
I'd rather you just be straight up than to beat around the bush. Like it drives me nuts because I'm not stupid, and it's like I can literally read when you're being passive aggressive. Like you talking like that, I can tell.
Yeah.
Some people may not. Some people don't realize that people are doing it.
I don't know if it's a trauma response, but I feel like it is.
Yeah, like
Like
my trauma test that I took, I am a complete fighter. Like it is like they give you the flight or fight, and I am fight 100%. When I took that test, they're like, "Oh yeah, like
for sure.
it came back that you're fight," and I'm like, "Yeah," because that was like my thing. Like I was like survival. I felt like so.
Right.
It's like now I fight. Like that's probably why I am very argumentative over things, but yeah, I like had this boss, and I was just like the passive aggressiveness is like constant, and I kind of like it just let it go. I've learned to bite my tongue, believe it or not. It's crazy. High school, I probably never would have, but um, I was sitting at the desk, and like she was putting up the Christmas tree. Well, I didn't offer. I had shit to do. Like was busy. I was doing a whole sort of things. Like uh, anyway, it was overwhelming up there
Right.
anyway. And she's putting up the Christmas tree, and I was sitting there doing my work. And then there was one lady who came in and was like, "Hey, do you want me to help you with that?" And she's like, "So many people walk in here and not offer to help. Thank you so much." And nobody had walked into that office. Nobody. So I'm instantly like, that is a complete like dagger, like
Right.
shots fired to the person sitting behind the desk who's literally working. And I was just like, like through the screen, I was like, I'm busy. Like, I'm not going to go put up a Christmas tree. I'm a Grinch. I don't,
Right.
like I just,
that's an extracurricular activity.
yeah,
That's
like my
not
job
your
is more
time.
important than putting up a Christmas tree right now. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just
Do you
how it is.
something to do with our generation because I'm the exact same way. Like whenever people are doing things in the office that are not work related, I'm just like I don't care to participate because
I feel like our generation is pretty lazy.
like
Like a lot of times. Like I feel like I'm not lazy when it comes to my job. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm not lazy. Like, I do get lazy, but like in my job, I'm not. Like, I'm not that way. But I know a lot of people who like just are. And I feel like I don't know. I feel like we're not that way though.
I I know that mine comes from like my parents worked so hard
Mhm.
forever and like
Yeah.
they were just like all business, no play,
Right.
while they
Mhm.
were at work. And so I feel like I just never like my mom would talk about like, they had Christmas parties and things like that I understand, but like to take an entire afternoon to decorate the office whenever you could do that before or after
After.
work, like
Yeah.
I don't care if it's decorated or not.
I don't either.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm like, I don't feel like that doesn't matter to me. So
Yeah.
like, why do you care if I help you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have been the exact same way in your
Yeah.
situation.
Not saying everybody's lazy. I would clarify that. Not everybody, but I have encountered people who people get very offended. So I have to be careful because it's crazy. I say one little thing and they're like, she said this. I'm like, it's just the truth. Like, encountered people like from experience.
I watched a video like that the other day and it said something about um like you feel like you're misinterpreted, so you like kind of overcompensate.
Yeah.
And I do that so
Me
much.
too.
And I don't know why. I feel like it's which the I'm pretty sure the person that was making the video was autistic. I think that's what she said. And she said that that's why she has like not the best social skills. And I also feel like I don't have like the best social skills just because
Mhm.
like I can have a conversation with somebody. Diego and I do this a lot. Like we have a conversation and then I'll say one thing and he completely misses what it is. And that happened a lot in my childhood. Is like I would say something or I would ask a question to get clarification and then it would cause somebody to get upset or they would
Right.
like be offended by what I said and it didn't make sense to me and so
Mhm.
I constantly felt like I was being misinterpreted and then I feel like I definitely brought that along with me throughout my life to
Mhm.
where I always feel like I have to over clarify what I'm saying or what I'm
Right.
doing so that people don't get upset because it's never
Yeah.
my intention to offend somebody because I don't get offended by other people's opinions or like, the things
Mhm.
that people say, like it just doesn't affect me as much or
Right.
I've worked really hard to let it not affect me. And so I think that that is just something that, I think I've brought it from childhood and I know that it's something that I need to work on is like not everybody needs to know exactly
Yeah,
what
and that's hard for me too because I feel
but
like I constantly have to like be like, and it's I'm not trying to be hateful or I'm not
yes.
trying to be this way because they do get so offended.
Yeah.
And I've realized that a lot. Like,
Like
bosses get very offended. Like, if you come at them and say, I need your help with this because this is happening, and they're like, well, we're trying.
I feel
That's not
like
what I was saying.
older
I'm not saying that you're
generations
not trying, or I'm not saying that you're not working. That's not at all what I said. So I feel the same way. Like, you have to like correct yourself,
yeah.
and I feel like I do that a lot too, just because I'm like, I'm just that just say what's on my mind,
Exactly.
this
And I
and
do
that
too.
way.
I feel like
No.
and maybe I just like lack a filter
Uh,
somewhere.
I definitely do. You can ask anybody in my family. I lack that.
Like,
I have gotten a filter though. I promise. I do have one because it's way better now than it used to be. Like if somebody would make me mad, like it was instant. Like you have a problem, you
right,
know. Now I just am like whatever,
right.
you
I
know.
feel like maybe it's just like as your priorities change, maybe you're
Yeah,
just like feeling more
maturity. I don't know.
comfortable with
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
I I don't know what it is, but
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, but I'm like, my coworker's like, you could make it in New York. You wouldn't make it in New York because you smile at people and they don't do that there.
Oh my gosh, people there,
And they
whenever
don't.
we went to visit senior year was like,
Yeah.
I was like, what is wrong with people?
That's when we went to Wisconsin. Like we went into Jimmy John's, that's where we stopped to eat for lunch. And this lady was so rude. Like And we're like just happy to be here, like we're just like Oklahomans, like we're
Right.
just friendly people unless, for me, piss me off, then I'm not so friendly. But
Southern
a
charm.
lot of people like that. Um, but you go in there and she's like, "Can I help you?" And I'm just like, that goes through me. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, that's not even just straightforwardness at that point. Like, that is just like flat out like
Rude.
rude. And so we literally grabbed the Jimmy Johns. I said, "We're going to the car." Because I was literally like, if she talks like that again, like I'm going to lose it. Like we're gonna so we did.
I
We
don't
went to
understand
the car.
unnecessary rudeness. I feel like
Yeah.
if I'm in a negative mood, I try to avoid interacting with other people so that I don't spread that to
To
them.
others.
And then, but then also, I feel like if I do have to interact with somebody while I'm in a negative mood, I find it quite easy to set my feelings aside and have a pleasant interaction. But like if I do find myself making it more unpleasant, then I try to remove myself as quickly as possible without being rude or, like
Mhm.
inappropriate or whatever. Um, so it really is confusing to me why other people lack that or like
Yeah.
why other
Yeah.
people can't do
I don't
that.
know. And I'm all for like being straightforward, but when you're just like that is just how you come off, like I'm sorry, but I don't like that either. But
Yeah.
it's like I can yeah. Mm-mm. But that's like my thing. They're like, you wouldn't make it because you Oklahomans, in quotation, is what I've been told. They are just overly friendly. And I'm like, I'd rather have somebody be like, nice until you don't, you know, can't be nice.
Yeah.
But like, just to be like, just crappy, like, why are you looking at me?
Yeah.
And like, our friend, she
I'm
is
like,
from New York
what's
too.
wrong with you?
Yeah.
That you can't have a simple, pleasant interaction.
Yeah. And that's me. I people watch. So when I'm staring at people, like, I get in trouble all the time for it. All the time I get in trouble because I will watch people. I'm just reading people and I don't even realize I do it. When I'm looking at people and watching them, I'm just watching them.
When you like have a normal conversation with somebody, do you find yourself like analyzing them?
Yes, constantly.
I feel like I would have done the same thing. I
And I do
tried
it all
to
the time.
pursue psychology and
Yeah.
thought it was interesting.
But I have ADHD too, and
Uh,
it's not. I wouldn't say my ADHD is like really that bad, but it's definitely there. It's gotten worse as I've gotten older, but it's manageable. But I feel like I get easily distracted by things. So when I'm looking at people, like I'm in their conversation, I'm over in this conversation, like I'm just
yes.
like my mind is just going 1,000 miles an hour, and so, and then I'm like reading people and I'm like, hey, they could be like bipolar or, like you're like diagnosing them without like meaning to, I guess. Like
Right.
that is like, that's probably a negative of mine is like people watch and I'm like reading their behaviors and like,
See, I don't know why or like what happened in my childhood that like made me have to be aware of my surroundings. I don't know if it was because like my parents always like told me to make sure that I knew
yeah,
what was going on, or if like maybe I like repressed something that I don't remember that was like traumatizing. I don't know, but like I always have been the same way. Like I've always like
mm,
I like read a room as soon as I walk in, and like whenever I'm there, and I know it's because partially I'm a Scorpio, so like I just like to stand in the
yeah,
corner and like get a vibe of everybody, and I'm like, okay, those people are mad, those people are arguing right
they're
now.
not where I want to be.
I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, those people look happy. I'll go see if I can talk to them.
yeah. I don't know. I'm the same way, and I don't know if it's because I've been going through school and it's just like something, and I do it on a daily basis.
Like it's something you've learned.
Yeah, like I do it every day. Like this is what I do. Like with the kids, like that's what I'm analyzing them. That's just what I do, and so I take it outside, and I don't even realize I do it. But they're like, "You're staring at them," and I'm like, "Oh, sorry."
I know. I always feel like my I don't know, and maybe it was my dad. he would always tell me that like I'm gonna get shot one day because I just stare at people.
Yeah.
And like, cause I will, like, I'll be in the car and like if the windows are like, I won't realize that the windows aren't tinted, and then like
Mhm.
staring at the driver next to me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why is he so angry?
Well,
You
yeah,
know?
like trying to figure it out. I
And
get
then,
that.
but then like Diego will hit me, and he's like, the windows are like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Well, our W is probably really, well, he should be, that I am a people watcher and I am aware of my surroundings because we had a really scary experience in Tulsa. And this is why I don't go places by myself very often. And I know it probably annoys him because I would like to go to Tulsa and I like to go to Stillwater, but I will not go by myself. Like I just will not.
It's scary.
And I will not take children by myself. No, like it's just not happening. So, but we had went for his friend's birthday to it used to be the golf, the suites, the not
Oh,
Top Golf, but
Golf Suites Jinx.
yeah, whatever it's called now. We were there, and anyway, what happened was, I DD because I was like, they're not driving drunk, so I'll DD, and we were on our way back to the truck after the whole thing. Well, one of them like left like their wallet or something inside, so I went to go get it, and then when I came back, like I was by myself, they were in the truck, and I load up in the truck and I pull out. Anyway, I with the GPS, like I hate that stupid thing because it'll reroute you because you're trying to figure out like how to get out of here. And I actually made it into a neighborhood where it was like one of those like turnaround.
Oh yeah.
Just had like a little circle drive, had about 5 houses, and then I just stopped there to try to get back on to where I needed to be.
Try to like assess
Yeah.
what was going on.
And anyway, that there was a car that was following me, but I thought, well, they live down here,
Right.
Well, they pulled onto the side and they had their lights off, they turned their car off, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Didn't think anything of it until I started to drive off, and then that car turned on, and then they started following the truck.
What?
Yes. And so then you get to the stop sign, and I turned right, and I went straight, and that car was still following me. I was like, am I being paranoid?
Right.
Like, I'm like, I know I do this. Like, I overthink because of my anxiety. Like, I overthink everything, but I'm being like paranoid. So I flipped to get into the next lane. I signaled over. It signaled over too. And it was so scary. And I was like, guys, I think somebody's following us. And they were like, no, they're not. I'm like, yeah, watch. And so I started speeding up. Then they started speeding up. I signaled back over. They went back over. So I pulled into the gas station right in front of the building. They pulled into a pump and just sat there. Nobody got out.
Oh.
Yeah. And so then they were
I
like,
think they're gonna rob you.
I don't know. Like it was really creepy. So I end up, they don't get out. We wait there for a little bit and they're like, go drive in front of them. So I like go to cut around the pumps and then this car tries to cut me off. And I'm looking in there, you can't see the person. I don't know if they had like a ski mask on or if they were just, I don't know.
Right.
Their windows were dark, but anyway, they rolled their windows down, the guys, and they were like flipping them off, and that car like sped off in front of me. It took out RW's front end of his truck
Oh.
and took off.
See, that's why those kind of people.
Yeah, and so I don't know if it was like he thought it was like just one person being me, or if he thought it was a group of girls. Like I don't know. There's no way he didn't see like the shadows in like the back. I wouldn't think. But so I don't know if he thought it was like a bunch of
very observant.
yeah. And so I was like, I don't know. But then I was shaking like the whole way home because
I would have been too.
I'm like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe that happened. And so now they're always like, no wonder you're scared of going places. I'm like, I'm literally nothing. Like nothing.
Yeah.
Like I would fight the best that I could, but I'm like, you don't know in that moment, like what you would do.
Diego and I, so we used to like wrestle, like play wrestle.
Mhm.
And like one time he like really hurt me, and it made me cry. And he was like, he thought that I was just being dramatic. He was like, "Oh, knock it off, like you're fine." And I was like, "Oh, he was trying to like choke me, but like pretend, and like really hurt like my, whatever
Yeah.
this is that moves." And He's like, "Just knock it off. You're being dramatic. Like, you're just like crying to make me feel bad." And I was like, "No, like, you really hurt me." I was like, "You don't understand that as a man, you are physically multiple times stronger than I am.
Mhm.
Okay." And I was like, "And you almost choked me
You don't
out."
realize your strength.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, "And you almost choked me out." I was like, "I know that like the muscles in your throat are very flexible, so I know that you were gonna like crush my larynx, but at the same time, like you
Yeah.
have to be aware that I am very, very much smaller than you." And then I think that it wasn't until then that he like actually had a realization of
Like,
like, oh my god, like if
yeah.
somebody tries to kidnap you, like you're gone.
Mhm.
And it's like that's and I told him like that's always been my fear is like I've
Yeah, mine
always
too.
felt like somebody's gonna kidnap me.
Sex trafficking, kidnapping, like, yeah,
Yes.
I'm very paranoid about it too.
And then after that day, he was like, so then he like, now he always wants to be like, okay, well, like, I'm gonna put you in this move, and then you have to try to get out of
Yeah.
it. But like, increasingly, he just
Mhm.
becomes more worried because it's not like I work out or anything, but like increasingly, I just like can't get away from him, and
Mhm.
so he's like, oh my god,
Oh my god, yeah.
yeah, and it's just
That's like you could go to the self-defense classes, like,
I took one in college.
yeah, and they're like, "You can go through the self-defense class," and I'm like, "Okay, I could go through them, but would I actually use them in that moment?" Like, you start thinking like, would you actually
Right.
I would love to do them. I think that they're really cool. But my favorite TikTok is the one where they're like teaching how to escape if somebody is choking you from behind in your car.
Mhm.
And you know how they like pull the seat backwards?
Yeah.
My favorite one is when it's the electric one and they're like slowly going down. I'm like, that would be my luck.
Right.
That would be me if I tried to do this. I'd be doing like all the things, like getting my fingers in there and then it'd be just
Yeah.
barely going. I was like, that would be exactly what would happen because that would be my luck.
Well, like it scares me because one of the things that they taught you is your hair
Yeah.
is a weapon that
Mhm.
can be used against you. And if somebody grabs a hold of my hair, like if they get, like this and they get it, I don't know how you would do that, but like this, if they
Yeah.
get it like I'm screwed.
And they're
And
telling you
so
to pull it towards your face.
and so I always have my hair up like as tight as I can
Yeah.
in my little clip. Like, but it's so scary.
That
All
was
the
like the one
things
thing they
that you have
said.
to think about as a female.
Yeah. That's what they said about the hair. It was like because when I started this job, we had to go through like basically a self-defense in a hold and all that kind of stuff for kids.
Right.
And I kept thinking like this was not only just about kids, but also for people who were going to the crisis center to work with people on different levels.
Right.
And how would you get away from them?
Right.
And so when we were doing those, I'm like, that sounds great, but would it really work?
Like what
Like
I
if they're
remember
choking
this
you,
in that moment.
yeah, like when they're choking you, they're like doing the whole like like pushing their hands away hard and like if they have you from behind, how do you get around it? And I'm
Right.
like, so like we would like practice on each other, but I was like, I got to thinking like if I think of like this one girl that I went to training with, she is tiny, 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 like short and really skinny. And she was going to the crisis unit for adults. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I kept thinking, how is she going to escape like a man?
Right.
Like, I kept thinking, like, how is that gonna happen?
Especially like they have like they're strong.
Yeah, and I never said anything to her, obviously, but in my mind, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, she is so fragile and tiny, like, I can't even imagine
Right.
if somebody that had all that built up anger and was aggressive like that tried to take it out on her, and how would those moves get her away from somebody like that?" You
Right.
know? Like, I know they teach you, like, all these things when you go through it, but I'm like, "How will that work out for you?"
Yeah, after my so in college we were in an all girls school, and so like in our orientation they had a trainer come and she was like, these are some basic moves, and then
Mhm.
she had a class that you could take. And I went to the class one time, and then I dropped out of it because I was in college and I was lazy. Just wanted to get drunk. And luckily I've never had to use any of them, but honestly to this day the only thing that I remember is that your hair is a weapon that can be used against you,
Yeah,
and if they have a gun, you just run.
yeah,
And run as fast as you can.
yeah. I don't that's what I'm thinking too. It's like and then, like I feel for like, teachers and stuff with like not being able to carry. Like
Right.
that always like it's like in my mind I'm like, but if they could.
I think that the mental health issues in this
Mhm.
country have like exploded
Yes.
in the recent years, and I don't
Mhm.
know if that's, I don't want to say that it's because there's been more diagnoses, but in my personal opinion, I have a physiology degree, so I just think that everything's because of our food. Like I think that America is just, we're just poisoned
Mhm.
day in and day out. But I would be really intrigued if I found a study that related our food abnormalities to mental health crises.
Yeah.
Because other than that, like what else makes sense? And then everybody like explains it by saying like, oh, there's just more people being diagnosed these days because there's less stigma. But
Well,
is
it's
there?
just I don't think I think
I know there's less stigma, but like, are more people being diagnosed? Like, or are they self-diagnosing, or are they just living with it?
I think it's just the generation that we're in, the society that we're in, to be honest. I have a lot of kids that I see who live with grandparents or great grandparents, and you have a lot of young parents, and you have a lot of parents who don't care. They, I truly think a lot of that starts with trauma because my favorite book is The Body Keeps the Score. Have you ever read that book?
No, but I do know about it. I do
Yeah.
know, like, okay, so talk about
Yeah, so that book basically talks about how even a developing fetus, like in the womb,
it.
so let's say a mom goes through a domestic violence case, and even though mom is the one that is going through it, the fetus is actually obtaining all of that as well.
Right.
Even though they aren't physically here, they endure that trauma because their bodies remember it, even though their brains may not, but their body's going through the motion of it. So,
To touch on that, in physiology, we learned that you're inside of your mom's body, inside of your grandma.
mhm,
So on top of that, you also have your grandma's trauma.
right. And so, like, and even though, like, let's say the child is born, and let's say they're like 10 months to 3 years old, let's just go. Um, Even though it's been so long ago since they've endured like being either sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, whatever it may be, even though trauma blocks a lot of the stuff that you go through out.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you remember everything, sometimes you don't. A lot of times it'll block it out. And so whenever they're that young, they're like, well, how would they remember that when they were babies? It's because their bodies do. Like their bodies keep the score of things that they go through. And that's why it's causing the mental illness is because it can't, I don't know how to put it, just can't unblock it. Like it's being
Right.
blocked and it's trying to come out, basically. And that's what's
Mhm.
causing a lot of the mental illness, is because they do remember. That's the thing. They do remember. Even though it was so long ago and you wouldn't think that they would remember going through that, they do. And that's why they start to behave the way that they do.
In recently, just like ever since I had my mental health crisis and everything that I've learned going through that, um, our bodies are composed of, I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of water.
Mhm.
And there's been studies done on water that if you say good things to it and then you freeze it, it forms perfect crystals and it looks beautiful.
Mhm.
But if you say negative things to it, like I hate you, I don't love you, things like that, and then you freeze it, it's all cracked and it doesn't have any like formations. It's obviously very affected by
Mhm.
what you say. And so and water holds memory longer than other things. I don't want to say DNA because I know that that's false, but I know that water holds memory. And so that's why I feel like we're able to store that so much.
Mhm.
But also, I feel like because whenever the water is unfrozen and you speak good things to it, it has the chance to reform into something beautiful. So I think that that also speaks to us and like how we also have the opportunity to unfreeze and
Mhm.
become different and like learn from that and grow
Yeah.
from that. Even though, it's like a piece of paper, once you wad it up, you can't ever get it back to normal, but you
Mhm.
can make it flat
Learn to deal
again.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's beautiful. And another thing that I learned along this journey is that as women, we store a lot of emotion in our hips and like our pelvic region.
Mhm.
So I've learned that like stretching that and releasing that through yoga, I got really into yoga. And releasing that energy through yoga, there's actually like a whole I don't know, ceremony, I guess, around it that you could do, that or some people offer, and pretty much you go and you stretch and you just cry. And I will tell you that if you do it correctly and you do it long enough, you will cry, and you might not know why, but it does release endorphins or emotions or whatever it is that is stored in those muscles. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like sexual trauma or anything like that. It just could be trauma, but as women we store it in our I assume in our uterus, I don't know. But we store it around like our pelvic region. And so if you have like hip issues or things like that, or like you're like you get really tight around there, um definitely stretch it out, cry it out. Like I am the biggest
Yeah.
advocate for like just being in tune with your body and just like I guess like relearning because that's what I had to do is relearn what my body needed because I feel like the job that I was in, the mental health job, just like completely like took me to a place that like was so dark and
Yeah.
so twisted that like I didn't know what was up and what was down. And so
Mhm.
I felt like at that point in my life I had to relearn a lot of things and I definitely was leaned on my degree for that, my physiology degree.
Mhm.
Because without that, I don't think that I would be here. Like honestly, I don't think that I'd be here today.
Yeah. I get that. 100%. Been there. Um, yeah, I think that's the best thing is just finding what helps you,
Yeah.
because like how certain people, it may help certain people, but it may not help everybody. Like with me, I think was actually going to somebody and talking and doing the NDR therapy.
Hmm.
That really helped a lot because, like we talked about, just the whole bottling things up and
Yeah.
it's just not healthy. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest problem with people. I feel like there is a huge stigma against mental health, and people aren't allowed to express. They don't feel like they can express how they feel because of judgment or embarrassment or things like that. And I think that's what I personally struggled with. And that's where I got into the place. And I felt like I couldn't get myself out of it. And it's like, why am I not getting myself out of it? It's like trying to
Yeah.
block out things that have happened in the past and you just can't sometimes do it on your own.
Yeah.
So,
I did go to a therapist in college, and it was kind of like mandated because I was on Plexico or something.
mhm,
And if you got your medication through the college, then I don't know, they just also had a rule that you had to go to therapy. And so at first I really didn't like it because I was like, I'm gonna talk to you.
yeah,
Like
it's
it
so
wasn't my
awkward. It
choice.
really is awkward at first because you're just like, But I know when I first went in there to talk to somebody, I'm like, how am I going to talk to somebody about this? And I ended up like breaking down and crying like as soon as I walked through the door.
Yeah.
I think because at that point, like that embarrassment still was there, and I'm just like crying that I have to be here.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why am I here? Why do I have to be here? You know, like, but yeah, but I honestly don't know what I would have done without it,
Right.
honestly. And that's what's scary. And that was like one of the things they were like, well, if you could you, if you would go back in the past, would you change it? And that one's a tough one for me because,
We did a would you rather on this.
yeah. And that one was really tough for me because I would want to change the things that I have been through because I don't believe that there should be people go through what I went through. I just don't think that I don't think anybody ill will, even towards people that I don't like, should go through things like that. But um, it made me who I am today
Amen.
as well. So that one's hard for me because if I would have went back in the past, yes, I could have tried to take out a lot of the trauma that I went through, but um,
Where would you be?
but where would I be? Yeah, like what else would have happened? Something else could have happened, you know?
And it could have been worse.
Yeah, and so I don't know. That one was a tough one for me because I'm like, it made me who I am today.
I think
I don't even think, you know, and that was the thing is I didn't even know if I was gonna be sitting here today at one point in time. And I am here. And so I do give myself a lot of praise, which I do struggle a lot with like self-confidence. That's always been a thing. But I've, you know, have grown and I've worked on some of those things. But I am proud of myself because where I look at where I was like even 3 years ago, like I was at a point where it was not good. And so now I see that I'm obviously sitting here and I'm living my best life. I'm living the life that I am
meant to
making.
live.
Yeah, I'm meant to live. And so, um, yeah, that one was a tough one because I did watch the podcast, and when you guys were doing that, and that made me stop to think again, like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
so tough. It is a tough one because it did make me who I am. But I am proud of, you know, and that's why I always tell like some of the kids that I have, you know, that have these thoughts of like ending their lives or, you know, just encountering different people along the
Or
way.
even just like, why am I going through this right now?
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, I've been in your shoes because I feel like it's hard for me to do my job if I haven't related to them one way or another.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like if you had somebody who hadn't experienced anything mental wise or even somewhat similar to their situation, you can't understand them.
Right. Like if somebody had I don't want to say, I don't know what the
Like,
best word is,
let's,
like an easy life or a
yeah,
privileged life.
like I could not relate to somebody who's been through sexual abuse. You know what I mean? Like it would be hard for me to work with somebody who's been through that because I don't understand that because
Right.
I've not been through that. How do I better help you? Yes, school does help and it does teach you those certain things, but it's hard to relate to them on a personal level
Yeah.
with that, you know, where other things I can relate to them in. And so, like, you know, and that's why I tell anybody I encounter who has talked to me about it, I'm like, you know what? I've been in your shoes. I have been there. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I've been there. And I feel like it's you be honest with, you know, I felt the way that you feel,
Right.
but I'm here. And if I'm here, you can be here, you know? And so that's kind of the thing is like trying to relate to a person. It's hard to relate to somebody if you haven't experienced those things.
I think that the most beautiful part of my life which I really think that I started thinking this way after I turned 25 and my frontal lobe was fully developed. But I think that the most beautiful thing about life is being able to look back on those times where you did feel like that. And then you can see now, like maybe it's not clear yet why you went through that,
Mm-hmm.
but you understand that you had to do that so that you could be here. Like that's something that just I don't ever got into it, but it's something that like God had you go through so that you could be where you are
Yeah.
today. And I think that that's the most beautiful thing for me to like look back on
Yeah.
and see. It's just
You
like
hate to go through it, but
yeah,
it does help you, like you have been through it, so you can help somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's why I go like why I went into the job that I went in is just to let them know that you're not alone. There are people who have struggled and who have made it out on the good end of things. And it's sometimes like trying to end the stigma of it and letting them know that there are people that are here for you and trying to teach them those healthy relationships because 100% I blame not having not a big understanding on what healthy relationships are. And, that's like my mom, she was like, well, why didn't we know? Like, why did we not do that with you? Like they start beating themselves up and it's like,
Right.
but why would you? Like you think like you're trying to model what a good relationship looks like,
Mhm.
but not every kid has that.
Right.
And even if they do have it, you're they're developmentally not there to comprehend it, I
Right.
feel like.
So and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but do you feel like with your relationships you would desperately try to model the relationship that your parents had, and then the more that it wasn't the same, the more that you tried to fix it?
Yeah. And that's the thing is I was looking for love in the wrong places, and that's reality. The people that I have dated is like I said, it's not 100% their fault because I was my own my own issues and I had been through things. And I blame myself for jumping into relationships, not being healed from things. You're young. You don't stop to think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My whole thing is I never understood myself really either because I was like if I had went through this whole thing, why am I trying to jump into relationships?
Right.
Like and I think that was like devastating because it was like why would I do that? Because I'm just setting myself up for this. But in reality, it's because I had not been alone for like from junior high up until junior year. And I'm trying to jump into something to try to force somebody to love me the way I thought I deserved to be treated. And they weren't the one. And when they weren't the one, I pushed it.
Do you think that when you have children, you will, I don't want to say make them, but like you'll try to persuade them to not get into relationships as early as you did?
Probably.
I think that for me, that was like being so young and just like, and I can't tell you why I was looking for love so young, but just like at an early age, I just, I don't know. I just, like, I had my first boyfriend in the sixth grade. And then
Mhm.
I literally had boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend. And it just didn't go anywhere good.
No.
And then but my most traumatic relationship was the most beautiful relationship looking back on it. It was so karmic and so toxic. And today we are really good friends. We
Mhm.
are the best of friends because we just understand, we just have a mutual understanding that like I helped you get to where you are today and you helped me. Like we just understand that we wouldn't be the people that we are today without having gone through that together.
Mhm.
And why we had to like stay together for so long or why we were on and off so much is, it's just not up for us to understand, and we didn't beat ourselves up because of that. Like we didn't try to understand
Mhm.
what went wrong. We just I don't know, at a certain point we were just like, this has got to stop, and it felt like a weight lifted off of both of our shoulders. And
Mhm.
then it took probably a year and a half for me to be in like a good place emotionally to like reach out to him. And by that time I was already dating Diego, I think. And but I like had reached out and I was like thank you so much for everything that you have ever done, and thank you for treating me the way that you did so that I can learn to be loved in a way that I needed to be. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it was just, and we still talk about it today about how, like, we helped each other grow. And like, we were off and on dating from 15 to 19.
Mhm.
So, or 14 to 19, I don't know. But like it was all of my adolescent years and all of those years that like you need to learn lessons to grow. And I just today I'm just so grateful for that, and that I went through, even though during it I felt like I was in hell and it felt awful. And it was just like heartbreaking every single time we broke up, and every time that something happened between us, it was always just like, why is this happening? Why are we doing this? Why are we going through this? It didn't make sense until I was 19 years old, and and I was like, wow, like that's it. That's it. I deserve better.
Mhm.
He deserves better. We deserve to actually love people.
People are toxic for each other.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
Not my relationship. Very toxic. Not 100% on my part, but
I think
I
it's
made
it's
him,
terrible when
and I
we're
think
both
that is
together.
what I also struggled with was I think I blame myself for making him toxic as well.
Yeah, but you can't blame yourself for
Yeah,
that.
and I think that was like the biggest thing, like because I felt like I deserved to go through what I went through at the time because
See,
I thought
I felt like
that
that too.
I was the reason because that's what I had been told. You're the reason I do these things.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is so toxic and that is so narcissistic.
Yeah.
Don't even had no clue what narcissistic was until obviously you got older and went through school and I'm like, that was 100% what that was.
Yeah. Which I, in a lot of cases, should have been blamed for the things that occurred, but then in other cases, it was just like spiteful, to say
Mhm.
that. It was just like not the right time, and then to bring it up, years later, and then you're constantly fighting over the same thing that
Yeah.
happened years ago, and you're just like,
Mhm.
what is going on? Like,
Yeah.
just leave it alone. And at some point you're just like, what, like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So did you feel, whenever you guys broke up, did you feel like a weight lifted, or did you feel like you felt better, or that it was like the
I
end?
did feel better for myself until it did never stop. That's what the hardest part was.
Yeah.
That when it was over, I was done. And for me, I have such a big heart and I'm
So it wasn't a mutual
no, it
breakup.
was not. And that was the thing was I have such a big heart for people. Like I try to help people. I don't take my own advice all the time, but I am very willing to listen to people and help people. I always put people before myself. And I have, and that's what I had done
You feel
prior.
like you knew that and took
Yeah.
advantage of that.
Yeah, and I felt like I had done that for him, and I do that for people. I've always put other people's feelings and stuff before myself, and I bottle mine up. That's what I had done, and that's why I don't do that anymore because it mentally messed me up to where I can't do that. Now I can't not cry if something bothers me because then I did. I had to bottle everything up. I had to hide things. And that is kind of the thing. Now I can't because it's broken. It's been ruined. So that's why I had to seek therapy and stuff. But I felt like for me, I was done and I was ready for it to be done because I was the one ultimately who knew it was done. It was over.
Right.
And the fact that the belittling and stuff kept going on, and I get we were both very young, and the things that happened after the fact, after the breakup, and the continue like things that were going on. I think that yeah, it was not a mutual thing. And I felt good about the breakup until it kept going. Like even a year later.
And then you're like questioning.
Yeah. Because even a year later, like, because that's the thing, it's like, did I make the right decision? And I knew I did. But then you keep thinking, like, did I make the right decision? Because this is crazy. Like, but it was crazy then too. So I know I made the right decision and I know that it ended for a good reason. And it's so crazy that I talked about this, like, even we haven't been together for years, but he was what caused a lot of things in my life. And I'm sure I caused him some issues too. But the thing is, I've never come forward about things that we had been through in our relationship. I never had, because I never wanted somebody to struggle like I struggled, I think. And no matter what was said or anything like that to me, it's never come out. And I kept it to myself because I didn't want to be the cause for somebody else to struggle. And so that's kind of where that went. And, I mean, we don't see each other. We don't talk. We went to the same college and we got along. But, you know, I I forgive for certain things. I don't agree with what, but I do forgive for things because I think, you're young, you don't know what you're doing. You don't even know what a real relationship is supposed to look like. And who would have ever thought, never in a million years would I think that that relationship was going to last as long as it was. Yeah. I never thought that.
Yeah.
I mean, I had dated little boyfriends in junior high that you just saw at basketball games, and then you break up, and it's like, nope, on to the next. And it's not even a real, like, a relationship.
Like
it's just like
a hug and
yeah,
still.
yeah. So, I mean, never did I think that would go to where it went.
Yeah.
And then it did. So, but there was no peace to it. I was at peace with it. I was ready. But until everything after the fact happened, that is what caused a lot of the strain, I think, was after the fact.
Yeah. And then, because I feel like you could definitely like make yourself crazy, like
Yes. And you start believing everything that somebody says. You're at a fragile state anyway, and then you start believing the things about yourself that somebody is spreading around or talking to you about, or they're making over and that's what made me the most mad, I think, was making me out to be the crazy one. Yeah. Like, there was a whole incident that happened and I was the crazy one. And I'm like, but you don't know what goes on, like, because I chased a car and it wasn't even me driving. So it wasn't me chasing the car, but I had been in the car and I had influences and I was mad. Yeah. But the people that were there had this whole picture that I was the crazy one. Yeah. And I think that's what made me the most mad was I was drawn out to be the crazy one every single time, all the time.
Do you think that also like plays into the like not thinking that people understand what you're saying, like people are just like, misinterpreting you?
Yeah. I never got to tell my side of the story ever, and I'm fine with that. I don't need people to know like what I went through or anything like that. It's not, I don't need people to feel sorry for me. It's not anything like that. But it was like, you believe what he says, and I'm not getting a chance to explain what happened.
Right.
You're hearing one person.
Frustrating.
Yeah, and it is very frustrating. And I was mad about it because I'm just like, are you freaking kidding me? Like,
well,
and nobody believes me. Nobody believes me. It's like she makes things up, and it's like, why? For what?
Yeah. Well, it's like in a small town, like once you have a reputation, like that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that is so awful. Like the mindset that people have.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like they're not willing to see change. They're not willing to accept change. They're just like, once they have this opinion of you, and it could be a false opinion based on things that they've heard, other people say about you, instead of, and that's my biggest thing about about living in a small town is like, you don't know anybody. Like, you don't know anything that
you don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Of anything. They could wear things way differently. People know how to mask things way differently,
Yeah.
And it was a learning curve for me because the whole thing was after that whole thing happened, I went and started dating somebody else, and then I kept this bringing out my craziness because I hadn't dealt mentally with the things that I had went through, and it was kind of like trauma. It was just like kept
Well, you probably just kept telling yourself
that this is happening, you
yeah,
know,
you're
and it's
just
like
like,
it's
well,
not.
maybe I am crazy.
Yeah,
Maybe I am crazy.
but you know, and then you go and you get diagnosed with things, and you're like, oh my gosh, PTSD. You think military, like you know, at that time, I'm like, whenever they're like, you probably are more than likely we're gonna keep seeing you, but you probably have PTSD from like the way you're talking. And I'm like, at that, I'm so young at that point when I'm going through it. I'm like, I thought that was for people like that went through stuff like in the military,
yeah,
you know, like
a war. On dead
mental,
bodies.
like, yeah, like something like horrible. And they're like, no, like people go through things and it causes PTSD for people. Like everybody holds trauma differently. And so that's when I was like, oh, and then it's like, that's embarrassing, you know, at that point when you're like thinking, like, oh my gosh, like,
Well, and then being so young, you know, you take things personally.
yeah. And I was mad, like, cause I was like, my whole high school years, like, everybody's like, I wish I could go back to high school. And I'm like, huh, I would not,
Oh my
you
god.
know,
That me freaking too. Whenever people
yeah,
say that, I'm like,
yeah.
not me, man. Like,
No,
I'm so
that's
glad.
like, you know, like RW, he's always like, you know, I would go back to high school. It was fun then and all this and that. And I'm like, that's been nice because it was
No
not fun.
offense, but those
It was
are
not,
like my peak
yeah.
in high
It's just
school
like,
people.
well, I mean, like fun, like, you know, I got to do more like with my friends then and I got to play sports. I'm like, I miss the sports. That was my safe place.
Yeah.
That
I
was my
think
coping
I
skill.
do like miss the social aspect. I think that it's just like really hard
Hmm.
to like get people together.
Yeah.
And because then it's just now you have to deal with like everybody doesn't want to do anything and then
Yeah.
you're like, well, do we go bowling or do we go to the movies? And
Can
if we go
I,
to the movies we can't talk and
yeah. Can I like miss like elementary school? Is why we gotta miss high school?
right?
But
Like
that's like I've been asked that a lot. Like, would you go back in time and go to high school again? Do you miss high school? I'm like, no, I don't.
yeah,
I don't miss anything about high school. Nothing.
high school was traumatizing.
And they're like, you don't miss anything. I'm like, I mean, I guess like sports would be like the thing that I miss, you know, because that was like my safety net or where I felt like comfortable and my coping skill. But it was my place, you know, I guess. But
I think for a long time exercise was my outlet.
yeah, and that's why, you know, I had taken time off from because I was injured, and so not being in track, that was insane because I used to be very athletic, and I let myself go where I wasn't running, I wasn't even going on walks, wasn't working out, and I picked up working out again. And so then going to work out, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a stress reliever because sometimes I feel like I have built up stress just from who knows what. It could be
Right.
anything. I'm, you know, and I'm just like, it
Adulting.
just, yeah. And so then I go in there and I like, it is like a stress reliever for me. Like, if I'm angry, like, I just take it out, you know?
Right. I know I really want to get into like a boxing class. At
Yeah.
the mental health place that I worked at, there was a girl there that did um I don't know, I want to say jujitsu or something.
Yeah.
But it was like I was like, what?
Yeah.
That's
That's,
crazy.
it is insane.
But I feel like I could be like
yeah.
in the gym.
Have you ever heard of that Smash Room in Tulsa?
Oh, I
Where
really has went there.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Like that is what I'm like. If I get like that, that's how I want to be. Like I just want to go smash.
See, that's like okay, so I broke my hand last year because
Uh-huh.
I punched a wall because whenever I get mad,
Mhm.
I just want to hit things. Like
Yeah.
I'm just like, you know, like I feel like honestly I feel like a toddler that throws themselves on the ground and you're just like, I don't understand why you're doing that.
Yeah.
Like that's how I feel whenever I just like have too many emotions. And
Yeah.
this was during the time that I was going through like a lot mentally. And I was just like I remember like multiple days like being outside and like thinking to myself like I'm gonna go on a walk, like this is gonna help, and then like on my walk just like you know like breaking sticks and hitting the ground and just like being a psychopath,
Yeah.
but like you
Gotta
know
release it out
kind of in
somewhere.
a healthy way. And so like I'm sure my neighbors who live a mile away could see me and they were probably like is that lady
What
or
is that
out there?
doing? Yeah.
And but then like one day I punched the wall, and then that's whenever I realized like it's not the smartest way to take out your anger.
Yeah. That's like I'm like sometimes I feel like sometimes I just need to go out there and throw a ball and just hit it like I'm back in softball or something, or
Right.
like just go to the top of a hill and scream like you know, and I'm like, "Ugh," sometimes I feel like I need to do that too. You know,
Right.
like people scream in pillows, like that used to be the thing. Like,
Yeah.
just scream and
I used to cry into
yeah,
my pillow.
it's like finding what your coping skills are, and that's like with the kids. They're like, you know, if you're trying to find their coping skills, like what works for you. And I work with like from pre-K to eighth graders,
Oh wow, that's such a wide range.
so it is a wide range. So you're trying to adjust from littles to preteens. Yeah. And their emotions are very high. I like working with the preteens
Really?
a little better. I do. I never thought I would because I couldn't stand the attitude.
Right.
Because,
I think that that would be a struggle for me.
but they don't give attitude with me because I'm not like their teacher or anything. But that is, I do like working with them because, like with the littles, I have to like beat around the bush. Like I gotta dumb things down. I know it sounds bad, but you do. You have to. You can't just come out and say,
Right.
you know, you have to. And honestly, with them, like you can tell them one thing, it's in one ear and out the other. Because I feel like a lot of times with mental health in the littles, it needs to be family based because parents need to be on board with what's going on with the kid. And if it's not, then you're not going to get results and you're not going to see anything. They're too young to comprehend. And if not everybody is on board, they're not going to learn. And so, like, individual therapy, I feel like is more for like the olders, where the littles are more for like family based therapy because they yeah, we have some that are, you know, that have both.
I find it difficult to communicate with people that don't know what's going on. Like
Yeah.
like my dogs, if they frustrate me a lot lately because like they cannot tell me what they want, but they obviously want something, and it's just so frustrating. And then like Lynn's daughter, um, I like she's almost 2, so she does speak a lot of words, but
Mhm.
like whenever she's tired and she doesn't, and she's like just throwing herself on the ground or she's just crying for no reason, and you're like, what's wrong? And she like can't say it. Like to me, that's so frustrating. So,
Yeah.
because you're like, you just want to make it not, you want to make her not cry, and you want to
Yeah.
like, you want to help, but then you don't know how because you don't know what's wrong.
Wrong. Yeah.
So I think that's a big struggle for me. So I think I would also definitely struggle with like littles, and because
Yeah.
they don't have like the emotional capacity, to
Yeah.
understand what's happening.
And I love my littles. I do love them because I've worked with them for, so long and I do love the littles. And this is like my first year working with the preteens. So, but I have been working with them and I'm like, man, this is a lot easier. Like when it comes to like doing lessons and stuff,
Right.
like life lessons, they understand it a little better. Like, but the littles, they're just like all over the place. They're like, what are you saying? What are you talking about?
So can I color?
It's like, can you color? It's all time. So, but I love them. I love working with them. Um, I just wish the stigma wasn't there,
Yeah.
because I feel like even parents have that stigma from having, their kids in mental health services because they feel like it's a reflection on them as parents. And a lot of times that is not the case. It's not. Sometimes it's parenting, sometimes it's not.
Like you said with wellness, there's so many different layers that
Yeah.
affect people, and parenting is just one.
Yeah.
Like it could be the fact that they don't have a stable way to get to school, or they feel uncomfortable because they're wearing Walmart shoes and all of their kids have on designer whatever. And like, or it could be the fact that they were born that way, or whatever. And it's just, I hate that parents do that because
Yeah.
that is another reason that like I never told my parents things is because I didn't want them to think that it was their fault.
Yeah. I feel like that's the same with me too. Like you don't want to disappoint your parents or, I don't feel like it would have disappointed them. I just in my mind then it's like you're gonna disappoint them if
Right.
so
For closing thoughts, do you have any advice for parents or kids that are struggling or anything?
more for the families, don't let the stigma of mental health services stop you from doing what's best for your child, I think, because honestly, nobody's going to judge you for getting help for your kid. I think we all need a little help some way or another. I feel like you get more of a backlash if you didn't get them help, in my personal opinion. But if they don't get the help that they need early on, it's just going to be worse for you when you get older. And I feel like as parents, they all need help
Right.
in one area or another. You're not going to be the perfect parent. There's no perfect parent in this world. It's not going to happen. So, I mean, if you need the help, take the help. There are places and then people that are here for you and to help navigate you through life with your child.
That is so beautiful. And then another thing is, do you have any, of any resources or anything that you can think of that if somebody is struggling or they don't want to reach out? Um, I know there's the suicide hotline, and then
Yeah, there's a 988 number. That is the suicide hotline number. Any mental health agency that they have, there's Creoaks, Family Children's, Grand. There's a whole array of them, but they all have crisis lines too that are available, and they're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you ever feel the need to reach out for anything, suicide, struggling as a parent, to get those resources and to get enrolled into those services.
and then for parents or like kids at school, do you have anything that they could do to like should they reach out to their teacher or a counselor or
For kids at school,
Mhm.
yeah, reach out to a school counselor. If you're struggling with more with the little kids, it's hard for them to reach out because they don't identify. But the preteens, like I've had a lot of teens who have reached out to their school counselor, and then they talk about getting service, or even their parents, just talking with your parents about how you may be struggling and just getting you enrolled in those mental health services so we can help you navigate some of those struggles, the feelings that you're feeling, and then giving you proper coping skills to work on those.
and what would be a good way to kind of break this stigma within your own home? Like how would how would you have wanted your parents to talk about mental health with you?
I think just parents understanding their child,
Being more
just
aware.
being more aware. Yeah. Um, maybe working with them on coping skills already before you even definitely identify the triggers and identifying, like I know kids and I know they if they don't get their way, a lot of times we cave into them. Just sticking your ground. You are a parent, you're not a friend. You're a friend, but you're not only a friend. You're a parent. Your priority is to guide these kids through life. And you cannot sit there and play friend all the time. You have to be a parent.
You don't have to be a dictator, you just have to
No.
be a parent.
And a good listener, and don't judge your kid. Just because your kid's struggling and letting them know that you're there for them, no matter what it is that they're going through, I think will help too a lot with the stigma. I feel like we parents are hard on kids and they feel like they can't open up. So just giving them that reminder that we are here for you. Is there anything that we can help you with? I think just being more observant of your kid and just being not so judgmental towards them and being more informative and helpful.
Like noticing if they're in a bad mood and
Yeah,
like
and trying to figure out
questioning them.
why. And honestly, like I know like from going into this field, like the one thing I will work on with my kids are their coping skills. and positive affirmations with them every single day. Because when they get frustrated, I want them to already have that idea of coping skills before they get into school and knowing consequences. Because when they go into school, there's consequences. So you may not do them at home,
True.
but they do have expectations and consequences when they get into school. And your home should have expectations and consequences. And just like negative, like you should have positive reinforcement and you should have consequences. You have to
Exactly.
balance them out. If you have just strictly consequences with no positive in there, they're not going to be successful when it
But
comes
if you
to
only have positive reinforcement,
yeah,
and you don't have any consequences,
the behavior is just going to be
out of control.
out of control. So you have to balance it out. Literally, you have to have both. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of parents have done potty charts. Like it's the same thing when it comes with behavior. If they have good behavior, I mean, you have to, chores. Like I don't care what it is to have them earn something so they can have that positive reinforcement. If they're good, you acknowledge that they're doing good by giving them positive reinforcement
What
by
would you say? Like to give positive reinforcement. Like,
I think like if I
is it
think
just
doing
like good job?
yeah, like in rewarding them for their good behavior, like taking them out to do things, like going out as a family, not, I get there's a lot of things you can do for free outside of
Exactly.
taking them to the park. Their kids, you can make it sound interesting and they're going to be all for it.
Right.
But I think like having them work towards like a goal and then when they make those goals, then they get that reward. And it could be something little, like go to the Dollar Tree and let them pick out like little things.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what they strive off of. They do strive off of consequences and positive reinforcement, rewards, whatever it may be.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying like every single time you have to go buy your kid something, but if you can be like, okay, so you've had good behavior for a solid week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. Okay, let's go get an ice cream cone. Or like if they get good grades in school, like letting them know that you're there for them.
Yeah, telling them like you did such a good job these last couple of months. Like you've I don't know
Make
what
them
to say other
feel
than you've got it. Like you've
yeah,
done a good job, like good effort.
yeah.
Like thank them for
You wouldn't
being a
think
good
that
child.
but they do strive off of it at a very young age, and that's what builds a kid, you
Yeah.
know. But that's what I've seen a lot is there's a lot of consequences and they're not working towards anything. Like they're like, okay, well, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I'm in trouble, and they sometimes
Yeah,
they don't know why.
yeah. So, and I feel like a lot of times, like they have to have expectations and they have to have consequences.
And
But
coping skills other than we talked about exercise and like going outside and getting your emotions out by like being in a quiet place and being able to yell or yelling in your pillow. What are some other coping skills?
I work with my kids a lot on deep breathing. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy. It really does because they're like breathing. I breathe every day. Yeah, but deep breathing, grounding techniques, those are really important with them. I know they sound so funny, but they really do work if they're done properly.
What is a grounding technique?
So that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's 5 things you can see, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can touch, so forth. So you can there's a whole variety of things that you can do with those. So
Okay.
doing those kind of things. The deep breathing, I did a fun activity with my kids where we did the dragon breathing. We got to make our own little dragons and they had little streamers on the end of a toilet paper holder.
That's
And
so
we
cool.
worked on breathing in and breathing out. And then when they breathe out, the little things like they're throwing flames, like, and there's a whole bunch of things that you can come up with to make it creative.
And that could be something that parents could do to like I guess if your child like is having a tantrum,
Yeah.
and it's something
Or
fun
just
that could
upset
help
can't
bring them
get
out of that.
yeah. Definitely giving them a quiet place. I know like with my room that I have like a corner that they go into and I have like um different fidgets. I have like a drawing pad where they can draw. They identify their feelings on a pillow. They do their deep breathing with a rainbow, or if they have their dragons, they can do it with that. Um, there's just a whole bunch of things that we can do with them. I
So,
mean,
and
giving
an
them a,
easy thing that people or that parents can do is just help your child understand what emotion they're feeling.
yeah,
Because a lot of times, I mean, even today, like a lot of times, I don't know what it is that I'm feeling.
yeah. Why am I upset? I don't know.
Like I don't know if it's sadness, or I know most people just jump straight to depression, but
Yeah,
like I don't know if it's like, is it to that point to where it's depression? Is it just sadness? Am I just upset because this one thing happened? Or like, and just kind of getting to the bottom of that feeling and understanding.
yeah. Because I feel like they need help identifying those emotions because they don't know what they are. They're too young to understand them. So definitely, and I'm always like, too, you have to talk with your kid. If you're going to let them play video games, especially mature content video games at such a young age, my opinion, you've got to be communicating with them on the differences in the video game and reality. And you would think you would have to, but you do. Because if you let them play those games, they have to understand that it's just a game. It's
Right.
not real. Nothing that you're doing is real.
Right.
I have encountered many children throughout my years of that it becomes a reality and they think it's real. They think that this stuff is really going to happen. You let them watch the news. You have to communicate with them.
Yeah.
Because then they think it's going to happen to us.
Yeah.
Like they know a lot of things.
The media that was consumed in my household was like news, Dateline,
Yeah.
SUV, Lawn and Order SUV. Like,
Yeah.
so like literally I was always watching negative media, and that really, really, really shaped the way that my adolescent mind formed.
Through
Because
anxiety.
like
And
I
worry.
I couldn't like go outside. Like I said, I would go play with my friends, but I would always be aware of like, is did that car drive by twice?
Yeah.
So, and I don't, my parents never ever spoke to me
Yeah.
about it. They just like expected me to understand,
Yeah.
I guess. But I think that definitely
Yeah.
would have helped as a
We're
child.
talking through it.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is they developmentally they're not there. They can't understand it. We may think as an adult we can understand it, but they can't. They're developing and
It's like people forget what it was like to be that
yeah.
age.
Yeah, and that is a huge problem. I'm not saying you can't let them play the mature content. I would say I would not let them just because there's so much that goes into that that I won't get into. But if you're going to, communicating with them, talking to them about the differences, and just keep their imagination, just keep talking to them so they don't think that reality is
Right.
imagination. Like the games, they're not real, but it becomes a reality.
Right.
So there's a reason they have an age. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes. Amen.
Because they're too young at certain ages to be playing Call of Duty at 8 years old.
Exactly.
It's,
Well, and I think if they're playing the games where like you're talking to other people, like,
and that's scary. Talking to them about internet safety. I have seen a lot of kids with cell phones who have like real TikTok accounts, real YouTube, can play these games. Like you said, talking to them. I've had to like constantly talk about internet safety with my young kids because even if they're not, we go over it because it's so important because if their parents aren't, who's going to? So internet safety is a huge thing.
if you don't believe in internet safety, there is a person on TikTok. I will find them and tell you guys their name later, but they teach internet safety by having people send pictures to them of like just their face and a background, and then they pinpoint on a map where that person is standing at the time of the picture taken. And that is so scary to think of because those pictures are not geotagged, they don't have locations. He analyzes the picture or video or whatever is sent to him to find the most amount of information, and then he finds their location on a map. It was so scary. This person, the one that I saw that was the scariest, was this person was not in a town that was related to them. They're on vacation. They were staying in an Airbnb, and there was a Target in the background, and he found them by searching for the Target and the apartment building.
That's so scary.
And so, yes, so if you don't believe in internet safety, just look up this guy. I'm sure you can find him. And because that was like a huge wake up call for me. I've always been taught about internet safety. And because my parents have always just wanted to protect me from my biological parents then finding me. But, so I've always known that like people can find you, people can track you. And then like even whenever I created my first Facebook page, it was a fake name, fake everything, fake everything. And I did that, and I operated that Facebook page for like 6 years before I was like, okay, I'm just gonna change it to my. It probably wasn't 6 years, but it was a really long time. And then I changed it to like my information. Once I got older, but like it's scary.
Definitely need to be monitoring what your kids are doing, what they're watching.
Too.
Sometimes kids YouTube, I know like that's supposed to be our protector, but I've seen some sketchy things even on YouTube Kids. Like if you're just giving them the iPad and you're not monitoring, you don't know what. And kids are smart. They can get past some of that stuff. I've seen it happen.
Oh yeah.
And so I think it's very important you monitor what your kids are doing. If they're going to have a phone, if they're going to have a tablet, even the kids games. Like I know I have some kids who play like Roblox. They can communicate on that.
Oh yeah.
They can chat on it. And that's why I'm like, okay, yeah, you're 8 years old. You do not need to let anybody know. Well, they're my friends. Yeah, but you don't know who's behind that. And that's the thing. They're 8 and they're not going to understand what I'm saying. You don't know who it is. Well, they're saying it because that's where they're at.
Yeah, and they don't understand that they can be lied to.
Exactly. Because
like, people can say anything.
Yes, they can.
And they can pretend
and I'm not
anything.
Like I said, in those games, like those are definitely better alternatives than the mature content ones, but definitely monitoring what
they're doing,
on.
who they're talking to, make
my
sure
advice.
that they're only talking to their friends and people their age.
It's a scary world. We used to run around the blocks around here, around Pasco. We used to be able to run around the town.
And now
let
my child walk
down the street. And now you can't even ride a bike down the road. Like, and that's what's scary. We used to ride our bikes to the swimming pool, and now, like, you can't even do that.
Yeah, I mean, we used to.
You can.
We used to ride everywhere.
Yeah,
we would go all over town.
You can, but you'd always have that thought in your mind. Be worried that something's going to happen because that's the kind of society that we're living in now. In fear.
Yeah. When I was in Mexico, I was on a ride with a go-kart ride with this lady, and she said that they had planned to originally go to Cuba, and the Airbnb host in Cuba was like, "Are you bringing your husband?" And she said, "No, it's just me and my friend." And so that she said, "I'm just gonna go ahead and cancel your Airbnb reservation. It is just not safe for American women in this country right now. You're not going to be safe here. I can't provide protection for you." And so she ended up going with her husband to Mexico. And so I was like, I didn't know that, but I've always wanted to go to Cuba, and I was thinking about going um as our second trip, our first anniversary trip. But I'm so glad that she said that because I was like, wow, that definitely makes me think twice. I mean, going to Mexico, I was a little worried, but everybody assured me, like in the resort, you're fine,
Yeah.
We did leave the resort one time and it was okay, but I was on edge the entire time. So definitely just being aware of where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, everything. And definitely just making sure that your kids, I don't know how you can like make sure that they're safe without worrying them. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a hard or a thin line to walk, but I definitely think that without scaring the shit out of them and
Yeah.
giving them
You
anxiety.
don't have to communicate every single thing. Like, we're being bombed here and there. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like what's going on in the world, like with the whole Ukraine thing. Like, I have kids who know about that, and I'm like,
That's a whole other country.
yeah, I'm like, you know about that kind of stuff, you know. But I mean, like some things, if
When
you're
America
going,
starts getting bombed,
if
we'll talk
yeah,
about that.
if you're gonna have them watching things, you just have to communicate with them
Like what's happening.
Yeah. And how, you know, they've got to understand.
Yeah, I think that it definitely helped a lot, like whenever I was older and just understanding that like being more aware of my reality and just like where I am and understanding that like yes, bad things happen in the world, but they're not guaranteed to happen to me.
Exactly.
And I think that that was definitely something that I struggled to learn because for the longest time I was like I said, I was convinced that I was going to get kidnapped at some point. I was also convinced that I was going to run into quicksand at some point in my life because every cartoon that I watched as a child, there was quicksand and they always got stuck in it. And so I was very convinced that quicksand was.
Yeah.
But if you do a quick research, there is not a lot of quicksand in the world. So.
Yeah. There, that communication could have helped you.
Yeah, for sure.
No.
But do you have anything else you want to say?
I think I'm good.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. We loved having you. We hope you enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me.